Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Speck, and I am president of Education Minnesota. Welcome to our presentation and press conference on reopening our schools. Our first speaker will be Kelly Wilson, the president of Education Minnesota, ASIO.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Wilson, president of Education Minnesota, ASIO, and I'm here today on behalf of the 7,000 educators and 80,000 students from the ASIO, Elk River, Anoka-Hennepin, and White Bear Lake school districts. Back to school has looked a lot different for us this year. We know in-person learning is best, and we want to be in school with our students. But we want to do it safely and in a way that's sustainable as we navigate the uncertainties of the COVID-19 pandemic. All 4 of our school districts have some form of hybrid learning, where some students attend in person while others join virtually from home. It sounds good in theory, fewer people in the buildings to keep people safe, but students get some face time with their educators. The reality is, educators are working double or triple time, and there are still safety concerns that haven't even been addressed. Educators are prone to do whatever it takes to make things work. We live for the moments where young and adolescent minds learn something new, for that elusive light bulb moment. We will do anything to keep the light bulbs glowing. To say this year has been a challenge is a huge understatement. The truth is, we are exhausted, both mentally and physically, and we're scared. We can't just keep doing it. Do it for the kids. Figure it out. Give each other grace. Or look on the bright side. Positivity without a plan is toxic. Pretending like everything is okay isn't going to help us. From the Star Tribune this past week, at least 864 COVID cases have involved people who spent time in public and private schools in September. About half of that number involved students and half were the school staff. Overall, statewide, infection numbers are soaring, and the Minnesota Department of Health says 40% of educators have conditions that put them at high risk. The guidelines keep changing, and we have educators doing 2, sometimes 3 different jobs as they manage students in the classroom and those attending virtually. Today, you'll hear from educators speaking about safety concerns in their buildings. You'll hear about the unsustainable work expectations and responsibilities and expectations on our staff. You'll hear how little clarity there is around contact tracing and the implications that has for educators. And you'll hear from parents who now ask that we stop pretending that everything is fine, because if we are honest, we know it is not. We are calling on parents, school boards, and administrators to truly hear us, listen to our concerns, and find sustainable and safe solutions for students, families, and educators.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Rettach and I teach biology at Champlain Park High School. Since Governor Walz announced school reopening guidelines for this fall, safety has been a huge concern for me. I felt very uneasy about returning to a school building, but trusted district leadership would have strong safety measures in place after a summer of planning. They didn't on August 31st when teachers returned to school, and they still don't today, even though teachers have been in classrooms for weeks. Along with a team of committed colleagues who share my concerns around safety, I've been investigating the district's shortcomings in 3 main areas: cleaning protocols, ventilation, and contact tracing. I'll start with cleaning. When teachers returned to school, we were given a classroom cleaning kit with surface sanitizer and microfiber cleaning cloths. We're expected to clean student desks in between classes using these supplies. The problem is, the cleaning product that's been provided hasn't been proven to be effective against viruses. The district has acknowledged that this is true, but assured us that custodial staff would be cleaning nightly on high-touch surfaces. I assume that desks would fall under this high-touch category and would be cleaned with just being used by up to 5 different students throughout the day. But I just learned this week that desks are only being disinfected on Mondays. This means that all hybrid students in cohort B are being exposed to whatever cohort A students leave behind. This is not the standard that our families expect, and our community deserves better. While the risk of contracting COVID-19 via surface transmission is low, it's not zero. Transmission via respiratory droplets and aerosol spread is of greater concern, though, which the district has acknowledged. This is where ventilation comes in. In August, the district claimed they were performing a ventilation audit in every room of every building, and we have yet to see these reports. They also communicated that each instructional space would meet certain air exchange standards, get enough outdoor air, and be upgraded with more efficient air filters, or more effective air filters. The few pieces of data we have seen suggest that the district isn't meeting those minimum standards in nearly half of our instructional spaces. Since many of us, myself included, teach in classrooms with no windows and no supplemental air filtration units, we're very concerned about the quality of our indoor air. As of now, there have been at least 5 complaints filed with OSHA, the Minnesota Occupational Health and Safety Administration, from teachers in my building. We're already seeing COVID cases at our school and across the district in staff and students. At my school, these cases have not been disclosed to all staff by administrators, and there are no active screening measures in place. There are schools that display this information publicly on their websites and use general exposure letters in order to more universally inform staff and families of potential exposure. If I've learned anything in these last few weeks, it's that I can't be my best as a teacher when I don't feel safe or when I feel my students aren't safe. Teachers need to focus our efforts, now more than ever, on finding creative ways to educate our students. And double-checking the district's claims should not be our job. We deserve better, and we deserve to feel safe.
Is it June 11th yet? I'm exhausted beyond measure. I've had to double my anxiety medication. I'm having panic attacks. Instead of spending time with my family on the weekends, I'm lesson planning. I'm afraid I will burn out. The work never stops. This has challenged everything I love about teaching. Going through this, not feeling safe, and then seeing teachers belittled in the media has made me come to the realization that I no longer want to teach anymore. These quotes are from many educators who have been teaching in multiple formats for less than 1 month. Hello, my name is Yahia, and I have the privilege of teaching special education in the White Bear Lake Area School District. COVID-19 has not only changed the way we go about our daily lives, it has changed the educational system completely. Educators are finding themselves overworked, overwhelmed, and exhausted. Educators are innovators by nature. We thrive in moments of creativity and spontaneity. However, with the current system in place, we find ourselves struggling to keep our heads above water with the amount of work responsibilities and expectations placed upon us. That excitement and joy we find in our daily work now feels like a dull light bulb ready to burn out. Educators are beyond dedicated. They are beyond dedicated and they love their students. So they give their all and they do their best, sometimes at the detriment of their own families. Our current scenario is one where we do not thrive. We love our work, but it has taken up every minute of our lives. I've had many sleepless nights in just the 1 month of school that we have had. My brain just can't slow down. I'm constantly thinking about my students, my work, and the work ahead of me. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about little things such as lesson planning for social distancing, but then I come to the realization that I have to create it in an online format as well. I have 3 jobs right now. I teach students in person 4 days a week and online in a hybrid model, as well as distance learning students. I can't have any blips in my schedule. No delays for managing behaviors, social misunderstanding issues, or self-regulation. I need to be online with another group of students tied down to my computer. Work expectations are ever-changing and ever-growing, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well. We not only need to create new curriculum to be digital friendly, we have to recreate lessons and work that we have already made to be online. I try to get to school by 6:30 a.m. every day and try to leave at 4 p.m. But I still log onto my computer when I get home. Some nights I don't finish preparing lessons or emailing parents until 10:30 p.m. The work spills over into the weekends, and I haven't even started revising individual education plans or evaluation assessment plans. With the reality of COVID-19, no educator is prepared to plan for how to switch learning models if a student or staff has to quarantine due to a positive case or exposure. Unfortunately, with just 4 days into the school year, my class was quarantined. We made the change overnight and got into a great rhythm of distance learning. My students adapted so well to distance learning. I had more engagement and success in that 2-week quarantine than I did all of spring distance learning. My students' success proved to me that I can provide the best possible learning environment for them when I am solely focused on one model. Then this week, my students and staff had to return to the chaos of hybrid learning. That quarantine also renewed safety fears for many staff members. A paraeducator who dedicated 21 years to my school decided to retire early due to the fear of exposure for her parents who are elderly and her family. I'm an educator. If something isn't working, I'm determined to find a solution. Asking teachers to teach in multiple formats is not sustainable. Minnesota educators are committed to doing their very best for their students, and they need your help. Listen to the licensed professionals. Allow their experiences in and out of the classroom every day to inform the decision-making process. Ask them what they need to ensure quality experiences for all students. Show empathy, patience, and kindness. We are all in this together. We fully acknowledge that our experience is not everyone's experience. We value being asked to work with our administration to find solutions to the many varied challenges of teaching during COVID-19. The path to solutions must include educator voice. We can do this. We are educators. We were born to change history, and we are doing just that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Whitman, and I'm a parent of 3 children who attend White Bear Lake Area Public Schools. As most working parents experience, juggling distance learning and working full-time last spring was very difficult, to say the least. When I first learned about the hybrid plan, I was thankful that my kids would be in school at least 2 days a week. It seemed like a good option. I thought it meant students would go back to school a couple days a week with half their classmates to keep everyone safe, and then they would learn online the rest of the week. What I didn't understand was that it would require my kids' teachers to essentially be working 2, or now I've learned even 3 jobs. They are teaching students online and in person at the same time while also working to support full-time distance learners. When I realized this, I was appalled. My kids' teachers have always given them their very best. They've invested countless hours to providing the highest quality education experiences for them. Within the hybrid model as currently designed, there are simply not enough hours in the day for them to manage what they are being asked to do. They're all sacrificing time with their own families, time supporting their own children's education, and their emotional and physical well-being. Today, I feel guilty that our educators are going through this so that I can send my kids to school a couple days a week. I know why this is happening. Budgets are tight, and districts simply don't have the money to do the right thing. Districts should not have to compromise safety to ensure realistic work expectations for our children and their staff. We need our legislators to step up and provide the necessary funding to ensure a quality education for our children while also preserving the well-being of our educators. Our students will not be served if our educators are burnt out. We must act now to revise the hybrid model and make it sustainable for educators. And we need our elected officials, both here in Minnesota and in Washington, to do their duty to make it happen.
My name is Sierra Washington, and I'm an education support professional in the Osceola Area School District. I am also a parent of a student in the same district. I am here to echo some of the same concerns that we have heard from previous educators and to highlight some issues specific to those who are in support roles like me. We are all feeling the same stress and uncertainty. This year is the first time I have woken up and not wanted to get ready for work. It just felt like too much. I work in a pre-K classroom with kids who have trouble social distancing. They climb on things and throw themselves across other students' tables, desks, and chairs. So they act like most 4- and 5-year-olds. We have no choice but to physically separate or move them away from items that are not theirs. This means we can't maintain a 6-foot distance at all times, and we are at half capacity. As an ESP, we are the definition of other duties as assigned. And that has become even clearer as we navigate education while in a pandemic. The COVID coordinator in our building is an administrative ESP, and she is doing the best she can, but has little authority to make changes or be proactive when issues come up. We as ESPs are in charge of the isolation rooms in each building, putting us closest to the students who might be sick. We are the lowest paid and have more people of color working as ESPs than nearly any other job category in the district. There are so many unanswered questions, but what is most concerning is how we are handling possible exposure. The procedures are troubling at best, since in most cases, there's a very real chance that I will never know if I was exposed. Parents who have kids displaying symptoms only have to keep them at home for 10 days, and there is no requirement that they get tested. The implication this has on other students and staff are horrifying, since notification is only required if there is a positive test result. I have asthma, and at this point there is little I can do other than hope for the best, and that's not right. Infection rates in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center are almost twice as high as they are in Maple Grove and Plymouth. The majority of our students of color live in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center, and we know these students and their families are more vulnerable to COVID. Equity needs to be front and center during this crisis. We need procedures in place to keep all educators and children, especially those who are Black, brown, and indigenous, safe and healthy.
Thank you all for taking the time to listen to teacher stories and concerns. These are complicated issues, but hopefully our experiences help to illustrate the impact of educational decisions on the daily lives of students and staff. My name is Judy Anderson Woolafter, and up until this last Tuesday, I was an Anoka-Hennepin English Language Arts teacher. Unfortunately, Tuesday marked the first day of my unpaid leave because the district denied my request to work remotely during this pandemic. My husband, John, also works for the school district and has chronic immune-compromising conditions that make him extremely susceptible to COVID-19. He released 3 years' worth of medical records despite objections from the union and even healthcare providers, but thankfully he was granted a personal health accommodation. Due to John's accommodation, and since I, as a middle school teacher, who typically sees at least 150 students a day, we assumed the district would recognize and understand that I needed to teach remotely to keep my husband as safe as possible. I submitted my accommodation request in early August, and we waited to hear a decision. In early September, Teacher Workshop Week started, and people were still waiting to hear about the status of their family accommodation requests. Open House Week came, and still no word. We started distance learning the week of September 14th, and I was excited to meet my students and start building relationships. After 3 years in QComp, I was looking forward to returning to my school, a place which is basically home to my family since my mom, husband, or myself have taught there since 1977. That's why it was devastating to receive word on Friday, September 18th, that my family accommodation request was denied. If I continued teaching, I would have direct contact with at least 110 hybrid students in a room approximately 500 square feet. Walking in common spaces to perform teaching duties like hallway or lunchroom supervision would also have increased my exposure to more students than can be identified for contact tracing. The denial of my work request to work remotely effectively nullified my husband's accommodation, putting him more at risk if I continued teaching in person. Taking a leave is painful enough, but the delayed timing of the district's decisions contributed to undue upheaval for students too. 3 of my classes were transferred to another teacher, and consequently 3 of her classes were transferred to my sub to try to simplify her teaching assignment. Close to 180 students were impacted by this switch. Yes, students and staff are incredibly resilient, but the delayed decision-making process for accommodations resulted in more turmoil for students, their families, and staff than was necessary. Under Governor Walz's executive order, quote, districts and charter schools must allow school staff whose health is at risk or who have members of their household whose health is at risk to work from home to the extent possible. Most of the language in this part of the order would appear to advocate for the rights of teachers and staff to continue doing their jobs with accommodations to maintain their health and safety. Preparing to meet that expectation would require some proactive work. Unlike Bloomington schools, which changed their model from hybrid to distance learning once they recognized how many staff would need accommodations, Anoka-Hennepin did not effectively survey staff in a timely manner. Also, unlike some districts which created distance learning academies to partner students choosing distance learning with teachers who would need distance learning options, Anoka-Hennepin did not establish such a setup, especially at the secondary level. As we think of what's best for staff and students going forward, I implore the Anoka-Hennepin district to recognize how staff on leave could still be creatively utilized to assist their colleagues whose workloads have easily doubled between synchronous and in-person demands. How might teachers create lesson videos or materials or start curriculum work for future trimesters to support their colleagues who are in the classroom? At our district's convocation during teacher workshop, Brianna Scurry encouraged teachers to think of this time as their World Cup or Olympic Games. If that's the metaphor we're using, then please don't sideline your players who still want to be in the game. Remember to utilize the resources and talents of teachers who felt compelled to take a leave when that was the only alternative offered. We never wanted to be out. We only wanted the protections that would allow us to keep doing our part. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Clocker, an early childhood special education teacher in the Elk River area schools and also a proud member and lead negotiator of the Elk River Education Association. Confusion, uncertainty, and fear seem to be the standard state of affairs for many families and educators across the country due to COVID-19. Our local teachers union, Elk River Education Association, represents more than 850 educators in the Elk River area school district. As educators, we not only look to our local officials, but increasingly we look to the governor, the Department of Education, and the Department of Health to help lead our public schools in creating the safest learning scenarios possible. Governor Walz and MDE put forth the Safe Learning Plan, which provides structure for decision making regarding when or if learning scenarios in our schools would need to change. The Safe Learning Plan states that districts should use their Incident Command Team or Advisory Council, consisting of school board members, bargaining units, that's me, staff, that's me, students, and families, that's also me, when making determinations about school scenario changes. While the EREA has requested to be a part of the scenario decision-making process, the Elk River Area School District has chosen to invite the EREA to twice monthly meetings that include EREA and the district only. At these meetings, EREA and the district discuss needs and do problem solving together. We continue to request the desire to participate with all stakeholders as the Safe Learning Plan outlines, because being included and being notified are very different. Decision makers keep changing the data points they use to decide what learning model we will be in. We started the school year using countywide infection rates to decide if in-person learning was appropriate. Not long after, the district decided to use zip code data as well. And just last Sunday, another change was announced that school or district data would be the primary consideration for determining changes to learning models. That is confusing. My own children attend Anoka-Hennepin schools, and I want to make sure that all stakeholders are involved in making decisions to ensure that confusion and fear can be pocketed and replaced with trust, transparency, and clear communication in order to have our schools be safe for all students, all educators, and our communities. Thank you.
I wish I could say this is only an Anoka-Hennepin issue. My name is Randi Weingarten. I'm the president of the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers. We represent 1.7 million people throughout the country, nurses, public school educators, higher education personnel, public employees. In many districts, and unfortunately, we've heard many of these stories. It doesn't make them any less poignant because this is going on throughout the country. What you're seeing in the country is a patchwork failure when it comes to our students and our educators. Educators are used to, every single one of these educators and parents, they're used to being able to figure it out. We figure it out every single year. Everything that gets thrown at us, we figure it out. But we're in the middle of a pandemic that's getting worse, not better. And ultimately, there needs to be some federal guidance and resources. Yes, Governor Walz, his plan, had some very good elements to it. The AFT put out our own plan in April of this year because we were not going to let schools reopen the way they closed in that kind of haphazard way. But you had to actually look with a microscope to figure out what the CDC was actually saying when they put out their plan in May. And that was before it got watered down with the false premise that students couldn't either contract or spread coronavirus. And what has happened throughout the country is, as our speakers have said, our teachers have said, I think Kelly said this initially, obviously every one of us would rather be in school. We'd rather be teaching in school. We yearn for it to be a normal moment. We understand that remote learning is a poor substitute. But we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it needs to be safe. And educators and children and parents are not dispensable in this period of time. We're not expendable. And ultimately, what this means in real time, and you can see this, frankly, in some private schools. Some private schools have beautiful lawns like this one. They have nice tents. People are outside in good ventilation. And people are doing one teaching job, not two. Anyone on this lawn right now would tell you, you do not have to be a school teacher to understand that it is impossible to teach people in person and to teach people online at the same time. And it is also impossible to try to do both jobs at the same time. That was never the intent of hybrid. But what happened here? What happened is there's no resources. Because in order to have a hybrid model, in order to teach in the middle of a pandemic, if you're not just doing distance learning, I'll get to that in a second, you actually need double the number of teachers and double the amount of space and double the number of ESPs. You need to have the resources, including the nurses in schools. And that costs money. And that money should have been provided by Washington, but still today, and I'm sorry to be political, our House of Representatives tried to do that, and the U.S. Senate, controlled by Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump, still will not give us the resources. I'm tired of hearing his Trumps or seeing his tweets that say, open schools. Spend 2 minutes in a school, Donald Trump, not while you have COVID, to see how impossible the situation is. And then on top of it, the whole issue of safety. 40%, sorry that I listened to the scientists, 40% of COVID is spread without symptom. Everyone is scared as the COVID rates go up. How the heck, excuse me for my language, how can we not have a system of testing and tracing as part and parcel of any attempt to have in-school learning? Again, that costs money. How do we not really focus on the COVID positivity rates? Again, that requires leadership nationally to fight the virus, not fight the scientists. How do we not make sure that someone who is home with someone who is immunocompromised, they have to have a reasonable accommodation too? All of this costs money, but all of this is based on scientific principles when you are fighting a pandemic. I'm a social studies teacher. I'm not a scientist. I'm a lawyer. I'm not a scientist. But if we at the AFT could learn this, so could Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos. But they didn't, because they didn't want to, because they didn't care. But in the next few months, districts have to listen to people, to teachers, to ESPs, to parents who are telling them what is going on right now, who are seeing firsthand what we need to change. Listen to the teachers, listen to the parents, listen to our kids. We need to get through this together. We need the resources. We need the national guidance. We need new leadership. But in these next few weeks, as the COVID rates increase, we need to make sure we're listening to what our educators are telling us. Every other year, they could figure it out. People relied on them to figure it out. They're telling us right now they can't figure it out alone. They need that help. And we need to listen to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is the end of our speakers. We do have time for questions, so I'm going to see if there are any from the press.